I still remember the warm summer nights when Sarah and I first fell in love. There was something magical about those days. We were young, living in our little bubble in Austin, Texas. I was just starting my career in graphic design, and she was a budding marketing executive. Everything seemed perfect, or at least that's how I wanted to believe. Now, after years of marriage, I can't help but look back and realize that things had always been a little off. To the outside world, we were a picture-perfect couple. We had our fair share of fights, like any couple does, but the cracks had started to show. It began with little things, her spending more time at work, then late nights with friends, then her sudden obsession with her appearance. I thought it was just a phase until the evidence became undeniable. I found myself bracing for the worst and dreading every moment I spent wondering what she was really up to. It was a Friday afternoon when I first stumbled on the truth. I had been working from home and had taken a break to grab a snack. As I wandered through the house, my eyes fell on Sarah's phone, buzzing incessantly on the counter. I know it was wrong, but there was something about that phone that pulled me in. When I picked it up, I saw a message notification from a contact simply labeled Jake. The text read, "Can't wait to see you tonight, I miss you." My heart dropped. I felt a rush of nausea and disbelief. I didn't immediately confront her. Instead, I decided to dig deeper. I watched as her behavior shifted even more in the following days. She was more distant, always busy with work or social commitments. I found myself feeling like a stranger in my own home. The signs were all there: fewer intimate moments, whispered phone calls, and the smell of unfamiliar cologne lingering in the air. Finally, I decided I couldn't take it anymore. I needed confirmation, a face-to-face confrontation. So that Thursday evening, I decided to follow her. Sarah claimed she was going to a happy hour with coworkers, but I had a gut feeling she was lying. I waited until she left and followed her to the bar downtown. My heart raced as I approached the entrance, and the adrenaline coursed through my veins. When I walked in, I was hit with the familiar scent of cheap beer and fried food. I scanned the room, and my stomach twisted into knots when I saw her sitting at a table with Jake. They were laughing, sharing drinks, and looking far too comfortable together. The sight felt like a punch in the gut, and I wondered how long this had been going on. My mind raced, replaying every moment I thought we shared. After what felt like an eternity, I gathered my courage and stormed up to their table. The look on Sarah's face when she saw me was a mixture of shock and guilt. "What are you doing here?" she stammered, her voice shaking. I could feel the anger boiling inside me, but I forced myself to stay calm, at least for the moment. "Looks like work's been keeping you busy, Sarah," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "Care to explain why you're with Jake?" She opened her mouth to speak, but the words faltered. I could see her calculating her response, searching for an excuse. "It's not what it looks like," she finally said, her eyes darting away from mine. "We were just catching up." A wave of betrayal washed over me. How could she be so brazen, lying straight to my face? I felt every bit of anger and hurt combine into a single force, ready to explode. I wanted to shake her, to make her see what she was doing, but instead I just stood there, heartbroken. As I stared into her eyes, I knew I was at a crossroads. The woman I married, the woman I thought I knew, was sitting across from me in a way I had never imagined. I wanted to scream, I wanted to cry, but all I could manage was to ask, "Why?" She fumbled for words, trying to brush it off as harmless fun, claiming she didn't mean for it to happen and that I was always so busy with work. The excuses flowed easily from her lips like a rehearsed script, but deep down I knew it was more than that. I could see the guilt flickering behind her eyes, and it made my blood boil. I was trapped in a whirlwind of emotions: anger, sadness, betrayal. All the love I thought I had for her felt tainted by her deceit. I could almost feel my heart breaking into a million pieces. I turned and walked away, feeling defeated and crushed. I needed to get out of that bar, away from her and away from Jake. As I stepped into the night air, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I could see the end of our story looming on the horizon, and I wondered how I would move forward without her. This was only the beginning, but I knew I had to take control of my life again. I had to decide what came next. After I walked away from that bar, my mind was racing. I didn't want to go home. I didn't want to face Sarah. Instead, I found myself driving aimlessly through the streets of Austin, the headlights of passing cars blurring into streaks of light. I parked by the lake and sat in silence, letting the waves lap against the shore while I tried to process everything. I felt like I had been blindsided. All those times I thought she was busy working late or out with friends had been lies. It was infuriating, and yet a part of me felt numb, as if I was watching someone else's life unfold. I remembered the days when Sarah and I laughed together, shared dreams, and planned our future. How had it come to this? The betrayal felt like a knife twisting in my gut, and I couldn't shake the anger that bubbled beneath the surface. As I sat there, I started to think about what I was going to do next. I couldn't just sit back and let this happen. I had to confront her again, not just about Jake, but about everything. I needed answers and I needed a plan. I couldn't let her think she could get away with this. The next day, I took a personal day off work. I spent the morning packing around our apartment, trying to decide how to approach the upcoming confrontation. I wanted to catch her off guard, but also force her to face the reality of what she had done. I thought about everything she had put me through, the late nights, the lies, the secrets. I could feel a storm brewing inside me, and it was time to unleash it. When Sarah came home that evening, she immediately sensed something was off. I could see the nervousness flicker across her face. "Hey, you're home early," she said, attempting to sound casual. "Everything okay?" I didn't respond right away. Instead, I gestured for her to sit down. Her eyes widened in anxiety, and I could tell she knew this wasn't going to be a pleasant conversation. "We need to talk," I said, my voice steady. "What about?" she asked, feigning innocence, but her eyes betrayed her. "About you and Jake," I replied, watching her expression shift to shock. "I saw you at the bar last week. Don't lie to me, Sarah, I know everything." The color drained from her face. "It's not what you think," she stammered, but I wasn't having any of it. "Then what is it, Sarah? Because when I saw you two together, it looked pretty damn clear to me." I leaned forward, my heart racing as I fought to keep my emotions in check. She opened her mouth and closed it, searching for the right words. "We were just talking." "It was nothing," she insisted, but I could see the desperation in her eyes. "We have so much history together. It was just a moment of weakness. I didn't mean for it to happen." "A moment of weakness," I echoed, incredulous. "You're using my late mother's jewelry to impress him, aren't you? I saw the necklace on you in a picture. That wasn't just some casual conversation." The anger in my voice surprised even me, and I could feel the heat rising in my chest. Her face twisted with guilt, and for the first time I saw her facade crack. "I was going to tell you, I swear, Just what?" "You just decided to betray me, to throw away everything we built together." My voice broke, filled with emotion. "You could have had an honest conversation with me instead of sneaking around. Please just listen," she pleaded, her voice rising in panic. "I was feeling lonely, okay? You've been so immersed in your work, and I thought maybe I could find comfort elsewhere. It was stupid, and I messed up." "Stupid doesn't even begin to cover it," I shot back. "You think I've been busy to avoid you? I've been working hard for us, our future, and this is how you repay me." She looked down, tears pooling in her eyes, but I felt no sympathy. Whatever remorse she was feeling was too little, too late. "I just didn't know how to tell you. I was scared you'd leave me," she admitted, her voice choked with emotion. "Maybe you should have thought about that before dragging Jake into our lives," I said coldly. "This isn't just some mistake, Sarah. This is a betrayal, and it cuts deeper than you can imagine." I watched her crumble, and for a moment I felt a flicker of sadness. But it quickly faded, replaced by anger and determination. I wouldn't let her manipulate my feelings any longer. "We're done," I said, the words leaving my mouth like a stone. "I can't do this. I won't be part of your lies anymore." Her eyes widened, disbelief washing over her face. "Please don't say that. I can change. We can fix this." "No," I said firmly. "You made your choice. It's time for me to make mine." I left her there, tears streaming down her face, and stepped out of the apartment that had once felt like home. I knew I had to get my life back on track, but the thought of what lay ahead scared me. I could feel my heart racing as I stepped into the cool night air, the reality of separation looming like a dark cloud. I needed to figure out my next moves, not just for me, but for the future I wanted to reclaim. I had some plans forming in my mind. I would confront my anger with action, but I needed to take a step back to think about how to execute those plans. This wasn't just about revenge. It was about finding my freedom from her betrayal. Little did she know, her lies would soon come back to haunt her. The night air felt heavy as I walked away from our apartment, my mind racing through the whirlwind of emotions I was feeling. I was angry, heartbroken, and surprisingly relieved. I had finally taken a stand for myself. But as I wandered the streets, I realized that standing up for myself was only the beginning. I needed a plan, and I had to be strategic about it. I drove to a small diner I used to frequent, hopping to gather my thoughts. As I sat at the counter nursing a cup of coffee, I started mapping out my revenge. It wasn't just about making Sarah regret her choices. I wanted to reclaim my dignity and make sure she understood the consequences of her actions. The first part of my plan came to me fairly quickly. I had to get my hands on my late mother's jewelry, which Sarah had likely kept. It was something that had meant the world to me, not just because it belonged to my mother, but because it represented the life I had wanted to build with Sarah. When I thought about her using those pieces to impress Jake, a fire ignited within me. I couldn't let her have that satisfaction. The next morning, I made my way to our apartment, heart pounding as I rang the doorbell. Sarah opened the door, looking disheveled and fragile, but I didn't let her see my compassion. I wasn't there to comfort her. "I'm here to get my mother's jewelry," I said bluntly, stepping inside. "Really? You're going to take that from me?" she replied, her voice thick with disbelief. "It's mine. It belonged to my mother, and you have no right to keep it after what you did." I could see the storm of emotions brewing behind her eyes, but I pushed on. "You used it to impress Jake, didn't you? That's the last thing I want to remember about those pieces." She opened her mouth to argue, but I cut her off. "Just get the jewelry, Sarah." After a long pause, she reluctantly nodded and led me to our bedroom. As she rummaged through her drawer, I felt a mix of anger and sadness. This was the woman I had loved, and here we were, standing on opposite sides, our dreams shattered. Finally, she handed me the velvet box that held the jewelry. I opened it to find my mother's necklace, bracelet, and a pair of earrings, all shimmering under the light. The sight sent a wave of nostalgia crashing over me, and for a moment I hesitated. But then I remembered Jake's crooked smile and how they had been intertwined in my absence. "Thanks," I said curtly, pocketing the box. "Josh, please. You can't just walk away from everything," she pleaded, her voice breaking. "We can fix this. I'll do anything." I walked out of the apartment without a word, locking the door behind me. My heart felt heavy, but I knew I couldn't afford to waver. I had to keep my resolve firm. The next step in my plan involved a little creativity. I contacted a pawn shop I knew of, one that catered to people looking to sell or trade valuable items quickly. I knew the jewelry was worth a considerable amount, and I needed the cash to fund my escape. I wasn't planning on sticking around Austin after what had happened, and this was my way out. When I arrived at the pawn shop, I felt a sense of liberation. The shop owner, a wiry old man with a thick beard, eyed the jewelry with a professional gaze. After a few minutes of haggling, I left the shop with a crisp stack of bills, feeling a mix of guilt and excitement. Good riddance, I muttered to myself as I drove away. I was finally taking control of my life, and the thought of leaving Austin behind filled me with a sense of freedom. I started to envision my future, one that didn't involve Sarah or her lies. I booked a one-way ticket to San Francisco, a city I had always wanted to explore but had never gotten around to visiting. The thought of a fresh start, new adventures, and freedom from the past lifted my spirits. I spent the next few days packing my essentials, ignoring Sarah's frantic texts and calls. I refused to let her guilt trip me into feeling sorry for her. On the day I was set to leave, I took one last drive around Austin. I passed the places that held memories, our favorite cafe, the park where we had our first picnic, and the movie theater where we had our first date. Each location felt heavy with the weight of nostalgia, but I reminded myself that I was moving on. As I drove to the airport, I felt a mix of anxiety and excitement. It was terrifying to think about starting over, but I knew it was necessary. I was leaving behind a life filled with deceit and betrayal, and I was ready to embrace the unknown. I boarded the plane, clutching the ticket in my hand as I watched the city shrink beneath me. I felt a sense of closure wash over me, knowing I was finally free from Sarah. I had taken back what was mine, and now it was time to focus on creating a new life, one where I could heal, rediscover myself, and perhaps even learn to love again. But little did I know, the real consequences of Sarah's betrayal were just beginning to unfold. The storm was far from over, and the path ahead would be filled with unexpected challenges. I was ready to face them head-on, determined to transform my pain into strength. As I stepped off the plane in San Francisco, a rush of cool air greeted me, filling my lungs with a sense of new beginnings. The vibrant energy of the city buzzed around me, and for the first time in what felt like ages, I could breathe freely. I was no longer tethered to the weight of betrayal or the bitterness of my past. I was determined to carve out a new life for myself, one that was entirely my own. I checked into a small hotel in the heart of the city, the kind that had character and charm. After unpacking, I decided to take a stroll down the iconic streets. I wandered through Fisherman's Wharf, where the scent of fresh seafood mingled with the salty breeze. I found myself smiling for the first time in days, letting the sights and sounds envelop me. In those moments, I realized how much I had neglected my own happiness while trying to keep our relationship alive. I thought about how Sarah had slowly become a stranger to me, and the memories of our time together felt like a distant shadow. I could finally see that I had lost part of myself in that relationship, and it was time to reclaim who I was. Over the following weeks, I immersed myself in the city's culture. I explored art galleries, tried new restaurants, and even took a few classes at a local community college. I found solace in the creativity that surrounded me. One evening, while attending a painting class, I struck up a conversation with a fellow student named Mia. She was a local artist, vibrant and full of life, and we quickly hit it off. Mia had an infectious energy that reminded me of the early days with Sarah, but this time I felt an excitement that was grounded in possibility rather than desperation. We began hanging out more, sharing meals and discussing our dreams. For the first time since my departure from Austin, I felt like I could let someone in without the fear of betrayal looming over me. But despite the newfound joy in my life, the shadows of my past were still very much present. I couldn't shake the feeling that Sarah would try to reach out again, and I was right. Just as I started to feel settled, I received a message from her that sent my heart racing. It was a simple text: "Please call me, I need to talk." I stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over the reply button. Part of me wanted to ignore her completely, to let the past rest in peace. But another part of me felt a strange mixture of anger and curiosity. What could she possibly want to say now? Was this her attempt to pull me back into her web of lies? I spent the next few days wrestling with my thoughts. I had moved on, but the unresolved feelings lingered like a ghost. Eventually, I decided I owed it to myself to hear her out, if only to gain closure. I scheduled a call for the following evening, and as the time approached, my heart raced with apprehension. When Sarah's name popped up on my screen, I felt an onrush of conflicting emotions. I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello, Josh," she said, her voice trembling. "I'm so sorry for everything. I know I messed up and I just need a chance to explain." I leaned back in my chair, trying to remain calm. "You've had your chances, Sarah. What could you possibly say that would change anything now?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she continued, her voice wavering. "I realize how selfish I was. I took you for granted and I was scared when you started working more. I thought I was going to lose you and that made me act out, but I know that's no excuse. Is this just about guilt or are you truly remorseful?" I asked, my voice steady but filled with pain. "I really am sorry, Josh. I wish I could take it all back. I've tried to reach out to Jake, but he's not interested in anything serious. It made me realize what I lost. You were my everything and I pushed you away." I felt a wave of anger surge through me. "So now you want me back because your rebound didn't work out?" "No, it's not like that. I want to make things right. I want to fight for us if you'll let me. I've changed," she said, her voice cracking. "I've been going to therapy and I want to show you that I can be the person you need." "Therapy doesn't change the fact that you cheated on me with a guy I considered a friend," I replied, fighting to keep my emotions in check. You broke my trust, Sarah. That's not something I can easily forget. I know, and I don't expect you to forgive me right away, she said softly. But I want to try. I can't bear the thought of living my life without you. I paused, contemplating her words. Part of me wanted to believe that she had genuinely changed, but the scars of betrayal still throbbed painfully. I had spent weeks rebuilding my life and finding happiness outside the toxic remnants of our relationship. Did I really want to re-enter that world? I need time to think about this, I finally said, my voice heavy. You can't just expect me to jump back into things. Trust isn't built overnight. Of course, she replied, her voice filled with a mix of hope and despair. Just know that I'll be here waiting. I'll do whatever it takes. After we hung up, I felt both relieved and unsettled. I had faced Sarah, and her words had stirred up emotions I thought I had tucked away for good. But I also knew that I had to prioritize my own healing. Returning to her would mean reopening wounds I wasn't sure I was ready to face. As the days passed, I focused on my new life in San Francisco. I spent time with Mia, who encouraged me to express my feelings through art. With her support, I started painting again, channeling my emotions onto the canvas. Each stroke became a release, and I felt the weight of the past begin to lift. But Sarah's call was never far from my mind. I knew I would have to make a decision soon, one that could seal the fate of both our lives. I was caught in a web of conflicting emotions, trying to figure out if I could ever return to a love that had been so tainted by betrayal. Ultimately, I realized that my journey was about more than Sarah. It was about reclaiming my identity and learning to love myself again. I would take my time, allowing the dust to settle before making any decisions. The road ahead was uncertain, but I was determined to navigate it on my own terms. The journey of healing had begun, and that was the first step toward finding peace within myself. As the weeks turned into months, I settled into my new life in San Francisco. The city's vibrant spirit filled me with a sense of hope, and I found solace in the routine I had established. I attended classes, spent time with Mia, and even began to explore the beautiful landscapes surrounding the city. I felt lighter, as though I had shed the weight of my past, but Sarah's call still echoed in my mind. Mia became an integral part of my life. We shared endless conversations about art, love, and life. Her passion was infectious, and I found myself falling for her. It was a refreshing feeling, dating someone who was genuine and cared about my well-being. She encouraged me to express my emotions openly, whether through art or conversation. I was starting to feel alive again, but I still wrestled with the memory of Sarah and my unresolved feelings about our past. One sunny afternoon, while Mia and I were having lunch at a cafe overlooking the bay, I received another text from Sarah. "Can we meet? I need to talk." A familiar tension gripped my chest. I glanced at Mia, who was laughing at a story I had just told, and I felt torn. Here I was, building a new life, yet Sarah's request threatened to pull me back into a world of confusion. "I think you should meet her," Mia said, sensing my hesitation. "You deserve closure. Whatever happens, it's important to take control of your narrative." I nodded, appreciating her support. "You're right, I need to face this head-on." I texted Sarah back, agreeing to meet at a park near my hotel the following day. On the way to our meeting, I felt a mix of apprehension and determination. This would be the last time I would allow her to disrupt my peace. I arrived early, walking around the park to gather my thoughts. I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had led me to this moment. I had endured betrayal, found my way to healing, and was now on the brink of closing a painful chapter. When Sarah arrived, she looked different, more composed, more put together than I remembered. As we made eye contact, I felt a twinge of nostalgia. "Thank you for meeting me," she said softly, her demeanor more earnest than before. "Let's just get to it, Sarah," I replied, trying to remain focused. "What is it that you want to talk about?" "I've been doing a lot of thinking," she began, her voice steady. "I know I hurt you deeply, and I'm truly sorry for that, but I want you to know that I've changed. I'm committed to my therapy, and I'm working on myself." "Okay, but what does that mean for us?" I asked, my voice firm but calm. "It means I want to rebuild our relationship," she said, her eyes pleading. "I know I don't deserve it, but I want the chance to show you that I can be the partner you deserve." I felt my heart racing as I processed her words. And what if I don't want that? What if I've moved on? Then I'll understand, she replied, her voice trembling slightly. But I needed to tell you that I still love you and I want to make things right. I hope you'll consider giving me another chance. I took a deep breath, fighting the flood of emotions that threatened to overwhelm me. Sarah, you broke my trust in ways I can't even describe. You didn't just cheat on me, you shattered everything I believed about our relationship. My voice was steady, but I could feel the lump in my throat. I know, she whispered, tears glistening in her eyes, and I'll spend the rest of my life regretting it. But I've realized what I lost, and I'm willing to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. I'll even give you space if you need it. Just please don't give up on us. Her words struck a chord, but the thought of going back to the life I had fought so hard to escape felt suffocating. I looked at her, really looked at her, and saw the girl I had once loved deeply. But alongside that image was the betrayal that had tainted it all. I've started to build a new life for myself, Sarah, I said cautiously. I don't want to go back to the pain of our past. I've done a lot of work to heal, and I'm finally beginning to understand what it means to love myself. I don't know if I can ever trust you again. I understand, she replied softly, her head hanging low. But I had to tell you how I feel. I'll respect your decision, whatever it may be. Just know that I'm different now. As we sat in silence, I could feel the weight of our shared history pressing down on us. I knew that this conversation would define the next chapter of my life, and I needed clarity. I need time to think, I finally said, my voice heavy. I don't want to rush into anything, and I don't want to hurt you further. Take all the time you need, she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. I'll be here waiting. As we parted ways, I felt a mixture of relief and sadness. I had faced her, confronted our past, and acknowledged the pain we had both caused. The decision was mine to make, and I needed to honor my feelings. Returning to my hotel that evening, I sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the city lights outside my window. I had been given a choice, one that could either lead me back to the past or propel me forward into a brighter future. In that moment, I realized that healing was a journey, and I had come too far to let my past dictate my future. I thought of Mia, her laughter, her warmth, and the sense of security she brought into my life. I knew she was the kind of person I wanted to build a future with, someone who embraced my vulnerabilities rather than exploited them. As I closed my eyes, I made a mental note to focus on the life I wanted to create, one that was filled with honesty, love, and respect. It was time to let go of the shadows and step into the light. The choice was clear, and I was ready to embrace whatever came next. The days following my meeting with Sarah felt surreal. I had felt the weight of our past pressing down on me, but I was finally ready to lighten that burden. I spent time reflecting on my own feelings, weighing the pros and cons of returning to a relationship fraught with so much pain. I kept reminding myself of the progress I'd made in San Francisco, the joy I had discovered in painting, the friendships I had developed, and the new love that was budding with Mia. One evening, I found myself at my favorite cafe, sketching the bustling street scene in front of me. As I drew, the sunlight filtered through the trees, casting dappled shadows across my page, and I felt a sense of peace wash over me. This city had become a sanctuary for my soul. It was in those moments that I realized I didn't want to go back to my old life. I didn't want to revisit the heartache or the mistrust. I was ready to move forward. After a few days of contemplation, I decided to send Sarah final message. I wanted to convey my thoughts clearly and definitively, ensuring there would be no ambiguity about my decision. I took a deep breath, typed out my message, and hit send. The words flowed easily. Sarah, I've taken time to think about everything we discussed. I believe that people can change, and I hope you find the healing you're seeking. But I've also realized that I need to prioritize my own happiness and well-being. I can't go back to the way things were. It's time for me to move on completely. I stared at the screen, my heart racing as I pressed send. I felt liberated, knowing I was taking control of my own narrative. Within moments, Sarah replied. Her response was filled with a mixture of sadness and understanding. I get it, Josh. I've lost you, and I know that's my fault. I wish you all the happiness in the world. You deserve it. With that final message, I felt the last remnants of my past slip away. I had given Sarah the closure she needed, and in doing so, I had also given myself the gift of freedom. I closed my phone, feeling lighter then. I had in years. The following weeks were transformative. I spent more time with Mia and our connection deepened. She was patient and supportive, never pushing me to rush into anything. I started to integrate her into my new life, introducing her to my favorite spots around the city and sharing my artistic pursuits. There was something magical about how easily we fit together, how her laughter blended with my newfound joy. One evening, while we were at my apartment, Mia and I found ourselves painting side by side, colors flying across the canvas as we chatted about everything and nothing. The atmosphere was filled with creativity and warmth, and I felt a sense of belonging I hadn't experienced in a long time. As the sun set over the city, casting a golden hue across the walls, I turned to her. "You know, I've been through a lot in the past year, but you've made me feel alive again." Mia smiled, her eyes sparkling, and I knew in that moment that I was ready to embrace this new chapter fully. "You deserve to feel happy and free," she said softly. "I'm just glad to be a part of your journey." With those words, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. I had spent so long entangled in a web of lies that I had almost forgotten what it was like to trust and be trusted. Mia was a breath of fresh air, and I found myself falling for her in ways I never thought possible. As we finished our painting, I leaned in and kissed her softly. It felt right, natural, and full of promise. For the first time in a long time, I felt hope for the future. I was ready to build something real with someone who genuinely cared for me, someone who brought out the best in me. The next few months were filled with laughter, love, and creativity. I continued to paint, channeling my emotions into my art, and even entered a local exhibit. To my surprise, I won an award for one of my pieces, and as I stood on stage accepting the recognition, I thought of the journey I had taken to get there. The pain, the betrayal, and ultimately, the strength I had discovered within myself. Looking back, I realized that the experience with Sarah had been a catalyst for growth. I had learned valuable lessons about trust, self-love, and the importance of surrounding myself with people who uplifted me. I refused to let the shadows of my past dictate my present or future. As I stood there on that stage, I felt a sense of triumph. I was no longer the man who had been betrayed. I had become someone stronger, someone who had reclaimed his happiness. I was ready to move forward, embracing the love and creativity that filled my life. With Mia by my side, I looked toward the horizon, ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited us. The journey was far from over, but I felt equipped to face it head-on. Life had a way of testing us, but I had emerged from my trials with renewed hope, and I was determined to make the most of it. My new beginning was just the start of a beautiful story waiting to unfold.